I, 27F, never thought I'd be sharing this story, but recent events have left me feeling both excited and terrified. It all started a few weeks ago at my cousin Mila's wedding. I was there not just as a guest, but also helping with some of the planning and decorations. Event planning has been my passion since I was a teenager, and now it's my career. As I was adjusting some flowers on one of the reception tables, I accidentally bumped into someone. When I turned to apologize, I found myself face to face with Chris, 28M, my childhood best friend whom I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. The shock must have been evident on my face because he broke into that familiar grin I remembered so well. Chris and I grew up next door to each other in a small town in Oregon. We were inseparable from the age of 5, always getting into mischief together. I remember countless summer days spent climbing trees in his backyard, building elaborate forts, and having water balloon fights. During winter, we'd spend hours sledding down the hill behind my house, coming inside only when our fingers were numb from the cold. As we got older, our friendship evolved. Chris was always there for me, whether I was dealing with mean girls at school or struggling with my parents' high expectations. I was there for him too, supporting him when his parents went through a messy divorce when we were 14. We had our first awkward slow dance together at our 8th grade formal, both of us too nervous to look each other in the eye. But life took us in different directions after high school. I went to college on the East Coast to study business, while Chris decided to take a gap year that turned into a nomadic lifestyle. We tried to keep in touch at first, but with the distance and our busy lives, we gradually lost contact. Seeing him at the wedding brought back a flood of memories. We spent the entire reception catching up, barely paying attention to the ceremony or festivities around us. It felt like no time had passed at all. Chris told me about his life as a wildlife photographer, showing me breathtaking photos of his adventures in far-flung corners of the world. I shared stories about my event planning business and the challenges of building it from the ground up. As the night wore on, we found ourselves sitting on a quiet balcony, away from the noise and bustle of the reception. That's when our conversation took a more serious turn. I opened up about my recent divorce from my ex-husband, Travis, 30M. Travis and I met in college. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed to have his whole life planned out. We got married right after graduation, both 22 and full of dreams. At first, everything was perfect. We moved to Seattle for Travis's job at a tech startup, and I started my event planning business. But as time went on, things changed. Travis became increasingly controlling and emotionally abusive. He criticized my every move, from the way I dressed to how I ran my business. He would make snide comments about my weight, telling me I needed to watch what I ate if I wanted to keep him interested. He isolated me from my friends and family, always finding excuses for why we couldn't attend gatherings or why I couldn't go out with my friends. I remember one incident vividly. I had landed a big contract to plan a corporate event, and I was ecstatic. Instead of celebrating with me, Travis accused me of neglecting our relationship and suggested that maybe I should focus on being a good wife instead of playing businesswoman. His words cut deep, chipping away at my self-esteem and making me doubt my abilities. It took years, but I finally found the strength to leave him 6 months ago. The final straw came when I overheard him on the phone with his mother, saying he was stuck with the failure of a wife who couldn't even give him children. We had been trying to conceive for a year, and I had recently found out that I might have fertility issues. Hearing him talk about me like that, as if my worth was tied solely to my ability to have children, was the wake-up call I needed. Chris listened intently as I shared all this, his expression a mix of concern and anger on my behalf. Then, he shared his own struggles. Despite his successful career, he admitted to feeling lost and alone. His nomadic lifestyle had left him with plenty of acquaintances but few deep connections. He confessed that he'd always struggled with commitment, afraid of being tied down or vulnerable. As we talked, I felt a familiar warmth growing in my chest, the same feeling I'd had as a teenager when Chris and I would spend hours talking about our dreams and fears. But this time, it felt different, more intense. I found myself noticing things I'd never paid attention to before, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how he ran his hand through his hair when he was nervous, the gentle touch of his hand on my arm as he comforted me. By the end of the night, we exchanged numbers and promised to keep in touch. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. I'd reconnected with my best friend, yes, but I'd also glimpsed a possibility I'd never considered before. Over the next few weeks, Chris and I texted daily and met up whenever our schedules allowed. We explored our old hometown, revisiting childhood haunts and discovering new ones. We went to the old ice cream parlor where we used to spend our allowance every Friday after school, laughing at how small the booths seemed now. We hiked up to the lookout point where we used to watch sunsets as teenagers, talking about our hopes and dreams for hours. With each meeting, I felt myself falling deeper. Chris's kindness, his passion for his work, and his ability to make me laugh even on my worst days were slowly chipping away at the walls I'd built around my heart after my divorce. I found myself looking forward to his texts, smiling like a schoolgirl whenever his name popped up on my phone. But I'm terrified. The scars from my marriage run deep, and the thought of opening myself up to potential hurt again is paralyzing. I still struggle with self-doubt, often hearing Travis's critical voice in my head. There are days when I look in the mirror and all I can see are the flaws Travis used to point out. Plus, there's Chris's fear of commitment to consider. What if I'm reading too much into this? What if he sees me as nothing more than an old friend? The thought of risking our rekindled friendship for something more is scary. What if it doesn't work out and I lose him again? I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to take a chance, to see where this could go. But another part wants to run far away before I get hurt again. I'm torn between my growing feelings for Chris and my fear of history repeating itself. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How do you learn to trust again after being hurt so deeply? And how do you know if it's worth the risk? Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. Thank you all for your advice and support, it really helped me gain some perspective. After much internal debate, I decided to be honest with Chris about my feelings. We met up at our favorite local park, the same one where we used to play as kids. As we walked along the familiar paths, past the old oak tree where we carved our initials when we were 10, I summoned all my courage and told him how I felt. I explained my fears and insecurities, laying it all out on the table. To my surprise and relief, Chris reciprocated my feelings. He admitted that he'd been struggling with similar fears, afraid of ruining our friendship, worried about his commitment issues, and unsure if I was ready for a relationship after my divorce. We agreed to take things slow, to be open and honest with each other every step of the way. It hasn't been easy. There have been moments of doubt and fear on both sides. I've had panic attacks, triggered by memories of my ex-husband's behavior. The first time it happened, we were at a restaurant and the waiter made a harmless comment about my order. It reminded me of how Travis used to criticize my food choices, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. Chris was amazing, though. He quickly got me out of there, sat with me on a nearby bench, and just held my hand until I calmed down. Chris has had moments where he's felt overwhelmed by the intensity of our connection, his old fears of being tied down resurfacing. He told me about a nightmare he had where he was literally tied to a chair, unable to move or take photos. It took him a while to open up about it, but when he did, we were able to talk through his fears together. We're working through it together. We've established clear boundaries and communication rules. We make sure to give each other space when needed, but also to be there for support during tough times. We've started a tradition of Honesty Hour once a week, where we sit down and share anything that's been bothering us, no matter how small. One particularly challenging moment came when Chris had to leave for a 2-week photography assignment in Alaska. It was his first trip since we started dating, and the distance brought up a lot of insecurities for me. What if he met someone else? What if he realized he preferred his freedom? I found myself constantly checking my phone, anxiety rising every time a few hours passed without a message from him. But Chris went above and beyond to stay connected. He sent daily updates, beautiful photos of the landscapes he was capturing, and even arranged for a local florist to deliver my favorite flowers on my birthday, which fell during his trip. The bouquet came with a handwritten note that said, "Distance means so little when someone means so much. Can't wait to celebrate with you when I'm back." When he returned, we had a long talk about our fears and hopes for the future. It was during this conversation that Chris surprised me by suggesting we try couples counseling. He said he wanted to work on his commitment issues and thought it might help us both navigate this new territory. I was touched by his willingness to put in the effort and agreed it was a good idea. We've had a few sessions now, and while it's been challenging at times, it's also been incredibly helpful. Our counselor, Dr. Martinez, has given us tools to communicate better and work through our individual issues. One exercise that's been particularly helpful is the feelings wheel, where we identify and express our emotions more precisely. It's helped us understand each other better and avoid misunderstandings. There have been wonderful moments too. Last week, Chris took me on a surprise picnic to the lake where we used to swim as teenagers. He packed all my favorite foods and even remembered the exact type of lemonade I used to love. As we sat by the water, watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. He also surprised me by showing up at one of my event planning gigs, a charity auction I was organizing. He quietly helped out in the background, charming the guests and even offering to take photos for free. Seeing him support my passion so wholeheartedly meant the world to me. I'm still scared. There are days when the weight of my past threatens to overwhelm me. Sometimes, I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Chris to turn into Travis. But then Chris will do something simple, like send me a funny meme or leave a sticky note on my fridge with an encouraging message, and I'm reminded of why I'm taking this chance. We're taking it day by day, both committed to making this work. It's not always easy, but it feels right. For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. We've even started talking about taking a trip together, maybe to one of the places Chris has photographed. The idea of exploring the world with him by my side fills me with a joy I'd forgotten I could feel. I'll keep you all updated on how things progress. Thank you again for all your support and advice. It means more than you know to have this community to turn to. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some recent developments. Things with Chris have been going well overall. We've settled into a comfortable rhythm, balancing our time together with our individual pursuits. Chris has been incredibly supportive of my event planning business, even helping me brainstorm ideas for a big corporate event I'm organizing. He's used his photography skills to create stunning visuals for my portfolio, which has helped me land several new clients. We've been exploring our shared interests too. We've started taking a cooking class together every Saturday morning. It's become a fun ritual. We go to the farmer's market to pick out ingredients, then spend the afternoon trying out new recipes. Last week, we attempted to make sushi. It was a disaster, rice everywhere, lopsided rolls, but we laughed so hard my sides hurt. However, we hit a significant bump in the road last week. I was at Chris's apartment, helping him sort through some old boxes. He's finally decided to get a permanent place instead of just renting short-term when he's in town. As we were going through his things, I came across a stack of postcards from various women. They were clearly more than just friendly, full of inside jokes and hints at shared intimate moments. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All my old insecurities came rushing back. I could hear Travis's voice in my head, telling me I wasn't enough, that no one would ever truly want me. I confronted Chris about them, my voice shaking as I asked who these women were. Chris explained that they were from his past travels, from before we got together. He said he'd forgotten they were even in that box. As he talked, I could see the panic in his eyes, the fear that this might ruin what we've been building. Logically, I knew I shouldn't be upset about his past. After all, I have my own history. But emotionally, it was hard to see such tangible evidence of his previous lifestyle. It brought up all my fears about his commitment issues and whether he truly wanted to settle down. We had a long, difficult conversation about it. Chris was patient and understanding, listening to my fears without getting defensive. He reminded me of the steps he's been taking to work on his commitment issues, including the couples counseling and his decision to establish a more permanent home base. He shared more about his past relationships, explaining that while he had enjoyed his freedom, he had always felt something was missing. He talked about how reconnecting with me had made him realize what that missing piece was, a deep, meaningful connection with someone who truly knew and understood him. After talking it through, I realized that a lot of my reaction was rooted in my own insecurities rather than anything Chris had done wrong. It was a wake-up call that I still have work to do on myself. I decided to start seeing a therapist individually, in addition to our couples counseling, to work through some of these lingering issues from my past. On a more positive note, Chris surprised me last weekend with a thoughtful gesture. Knowing how much I love cooking, it's a stress relief for me, he signed us up for a couples cooking class. We spent the evening learning to make homemade pasta, laughing at our mistakes and enjoying the process. At the end of the night, as we sat down to eat our slightly misshapen but delicious creations, Chris told me he'd never felt so at home with anyone before. It was a small moment, but it meant the world to me. It showed me that he's truly committed to building a life together, not just living parallel lives. We've started talking more concretely about our future. Chris mentioned that he's been thinking about scaling back his international assignments to focus more on local wildlife photography. I've been considering expanding my event planning business to include destination weddings, which would allow us to travel together occasionally. We're still taking things day by day, working on our communication and being honest about our fears and hopes. It's not always easy, but it feels worth it. I'm learning that trust is a choice you have to make every day, and that healing isn't linear. There are good days and bad days, but I'm grateful to have someone by my side who's willing to work through the tough times with me. Thank you all for your continued support. I'll update again if there are any significant developments. Update 3. Hi everyone. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some recent events. Things with Chris have been progressing well. We've fallen into a comfortable routine, balancing our time together with our individual pursuits. Chris has been incredibly supportive of my event planning business, even using his photography skills to help me create a stunning portfolio for potential clients. Last month, he surprised me by setting up a mini photo studio in my office, complete with professional lighting equipment. It's been a game changer for my business, allowing me to showcase my work in a much more professional way. However, we faced a significant challenge recently. Chris was offered a 6-month assignment to document wildlife in the Amazon rainforest. It's a dream opportunity for him, a chance to work with National Geographic and potentially have his work featured in a major exhibition. But it would mean being apart for half a year with limited communication. When he first told me about it, I felt a mixture of emotions. I was happy for him, this was exactly the kind of project he'd always dreamed of. But I was also terrified. What if the distance changed things between us? What if he realized he preferred his old, commitment-free lifestyle? We had several long, emotional conversations about it. Chris assured me that he wanted to make this work, that he was committed to our relationship. He suggested we could use this time to focus on our individual growth while staying connected through whatever means possible. After much soul-searching, I realized that I couldn't ask him to give up this opportunity. I love him, and part of loving him means supporting his dreams, even when it's difficult. So, we've decided that he'll take the assignment. We're working on setting up a communication plan, scheduled video calls when possible, emails, and even good old-fashioned letters. Chris has also promised to keep a journal of his experiences to share with me when he returns. To my surprise, as we've been preparing for his departure, I found myself feeling stronger than I expected. I realized that the old me, the one still wounded from my divorce, would have seen this as abandonment. But now, I see it as an opportunity for both of us to grow. I'm planning to use this time to focus on expanding my business and working on my own personal growth. I've even signed up for a solo travel experience, a 2-week culinary tour in Italy. It's something I've always wanted to do but never had the courage to try on my own. The idea of exploring new cuisines and learning from local chefs is exhilarating. Last night, as we were discussing our plans, Chris said something that really touched me. He said, "Mia, I'm not running away from us by taking this assignment. I'm running towards a future where we can both pursue our passions and support each other's dreams. It won't be easy, but I'm choosing to see this as an adventure we're embarking on together, even if we'll be physically apart. I'm scared, but I'm also excited to see how we'll both grow during this time. I'm grateful for how far we've come, for the trust we've built. A year ago, I never would have believed I could handle something like this. But here I am, ready to take on this new challenge. I'll update again after Chris leaves for his assignment. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. It means more than you know." Update 4. Hello everyone. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have unfolded. Chris has been in the Amazon for the past 5 months, and I won't lie, it's been challenging. There were days when the distance felt insurmountable, and my old insecurities tried to creep back in. But we stuck to our communication plan, and those moments of connection, however brief, kept us going. We managed to have video calls about once a week, depending on his location and the internet connectivity. Seeing his face, even on a grainy video, always brightened my day. He would share stories about the amazing wildlife he'd encountered, from playful monkeys to elusive jaguars. I loved seeing the excitement in his eyes as he talked about his work. The letters we exchanged became something I treasured. Chris would include sketches of the animals and plants he saw, and I found myself eagerly checking the mail every day. I started pressing flowers from my garden to include in my letters to him, a little piece of home for him to keep. I threw myself into my work and personal growth during this time. My business has flourished, I landed 2 major corporate clients and even hired my first employee, Sarah, a recent event management graduate who's been a tremendous help. The culinary tour in Italy was a life-changing experience. I learned so much about cooking, but more importantly, I learned about my own resilience and ability to thrive independently. One of the highlights of my trip was a pasta-making class in a small village in Tuscany. As I kneaded the dough, I found myself thinking of Chris and our cooking adventures. It made me realize that while I missed him terribly, I was also proud of us for supporting each other's dreams. There were tough moments too. Chris missed my birthday, and even though he had arranged for flowers and a gift to be delivered, I felt his absence keenly that day. There was also a week when a storm knocked out communications in the area where he was staying, and not hearing from him for those 7 days was nerve-wracking. But each challenge we overcame made me more confident in our relationship. I realized that our connection wasn't dependent on physical proximity, but on the trust and understanding we built. Chris returns next week, and I'm a bundle of nerves and excitement. We've both changed and grown during this time apart. While I'm thrilled to see him, I'm also a bit anxious about how we'll readjust to being in the same place again. Last night, during our video call, Chris shared something that put my fears to rest. He said, "Mia, Being here, surrounded by the raw beauty of nature, has made me realize something. Home isn't a place. It's a person. And you're my home. Those words meant everything to me. They showed me that despite the distance, our connection has only grown stronger. We're planning a weekend getaway after he returns to reconnect and talk about our future. I don't know exactly what that future holds, but I'm excited to find out. Chris has hinted at some ideas for combining our passions, perhaps a business that combines event planning with wildlife conservation fundraising. It's just an idea at this point, but the thought of building something together fills me with joy. This journey hasn't been easy, but it's been incredibly rewarding. I've learned so much about love, trust, and most importantly, about myself. I'm not the same scared, insecure person I was when I wrote that first post a year ago. I'm stronger, more confident, and ready for whatever comes next. Thank you all for being part of this journey with me. Your support and advice have been invaluable. Here's to new beginnings and the courage to love, even when it's scary.